Ah, Argentina, land of empanadas, tango, yerba mate. I brought my little mate cup for today's episode. And crippling economic problems that nobody has been able to solve. Until now, because guess what, folks? Donald Trump, glorious, glorious dear leader of the United States of America, is on the case. He's gonna fix Argentina, okay? Because on October 9th, 2025, the US Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, announced that the United States had directly purchased Argentine pesos and finalized a $20 billion currency swap with the struggling Latin American country. This move comes on the heels of a worsening economic crisis in Argentina. In September of 2025, the Libertarian Party of Argentina's president, Javier Milei, lost in a landslide electoral defeat to the left-leaning party in Argentina. They won about 34% of the vote, while the Peronists, or the left-leaning ones, got about 47% of the vote. This has sent investors into a tailspin as they start dumping Argentine pesos and assets all over the place, okay? They're just dumping. So why? Why does the USA want to get involved with this struggling country? Argentina has defaulted on its sovereign debt 9 times since its founding. 3 times just since the year 2000, in 2001, 2014, which was a little bit weird, but well, anyway. We don't need to get into that. And then 2020, defaulted again during COVID. But before we can understand why America wants to get involved, we need to understand the forces that propelled Javier Milei, a self-described anarcho-capitalist libertarian, to power in a historically left-wing country. And once we can understand Argentina's history, we can understand why Donald Trump and Secretary Bessent want to bail out Milei's government. Now, Argentina used to be one of the world's wealthiest nations. It is the 9th largest nation in the world by geography, the 2nd largest economy in South America after Brazil, and it has 47 million people. The central characters in Argentine political history are Juan and Eva Perón, whose legacy still influences the country's politics to this day. Peronism is complicated, but very broadly, it is left-wing, focused on state involvement in the economy, and very populist. Those who follow in their tradition are known as Peronists, and they are one of the most powerful political forces in Argentina today. You might remember I mentioned Javier Milei's electoral defeat. It was to the Peronists. Javier Milei is not a Peronist, but more on that later. So to make things short, in 1974, Juan Perón died, and the power vacuum left an opening for the military to kind of coup the government, and it ushered in a very dark period of Argentine history that we're not going to get into at all, but it is really fucked up. And they were disappearing people, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the point is, during the military dictatorship, which ran from 1976 to 1983, the Argentine debt exploded, external debt, that is, to foreign creditors. It went from $8 billion in 1974, the year Juan Perón died, to about $46 billion in 1983, the year the military dictatorship ended. So as democracy reemerged in Argentina, various successive presidents would try to deal with the economic problems that had most prominently emerged during the military dictatorship period, including high inflation, low economic growth, output, etc., all this bad stuff. So the most interesting to me was President Carlos Menem, because he sort of reminds me of what Milei is trying to do, although to a lesser extent. He ran as a Peronist, i.e. left-wing, but once he got into office, he pursued more kind of classical liberal policies, privatization of state industry, opening up markets, etc., etc. And one policy he pursued in particular stood out to me. It was the convertibility plan. Now, this plan pegged the peso, the Argentine peso, to the dollar 1-to-1. Now, in the short term, this managed to assuage inflation. It basically fixed it. But in the medium to long term, it made Argentine exports less competitive, not very resilient to external shocks from commodity prices fluctuating up and down in the market. All of this kind of comes to a head in this 1998 economic downturn, which Argentina is unable to recover from. And in 2001, it all kind of comes together in a big shitstorm catastrophe. Argentina defaults on its debt. It's the largest debt default in history up until that point. Greece was larger in 2012, but this was $93 billion in debt defaulted on. There were riots in the streets. Unemployment in 2002 reached 19%. It was just not a very good situation for anybody. Now, the 2001 crisis happened under Menem's successors, not Menem himself, but it was kind of a long process of everything. By the end of the crisis, it was totally clear that the convertibility plan was meaningless. The 1-to-1 pegged peso dollar was total fantasy at that point, so they became unpegged. A peso is definitely not worth $1 now, I'll tell you that much, as somebody who went to Argentina last October.
Okay. Por lo menos en el interior, en Capital creo que era más...
It's bitter.
En Capital estricto.
¿Le gustó?
Acá.
¿Le gustó o no le gustó?
Yo en esa época estaba...
It's hot.
A little hot. It's good though. I like it.
Complicado porque un
It's
restaurante
good.
con 8
Yeah,
empleados.
Yeah.
very good.
Now, despite the terribleness of the 2001 to 2002 economic depression in Argentina, from 2003 to 2007, the country actually managed to bounce back pretty well. However, in the 2010s, shit started to hit the fan again, essentially. I mean, the debt was still unsustainable. Argentina defaulted on its debt 2 more times in 2014 and in 2020. The inflation was just through the roof. Complete, rampant inflation. It was so bad in 2024, the peak of Argentina's inflation, it had reached over 200% inflation. To put that in context for you, the terrible, terrible inflation in the United States that played a large role in costing the Democrats the White House in the 2024 elections was 8%. The Argentina inflation, just in 2024, not even including the previous years, was 200%. That is like people's life savings just wiped out. So this is the economic context which Javier Milei walks into. He wields a chainsaw, he sings at rock concerts, he goes on tirades against the evil leftists, the socialists, the colectivas. And basically he styles himself as an anarcho-capitalist libertarian. Nobody expected this guy to win, but in October of 2023, he won a total blowout victory against the Peronists by running on a platform completely opposite of typical Peronist values. He advocated for a radical overhaul of the government, cutting all sorts of state spending, social welfare programs, state ministries, getting rid of all sorts of price controls, very libertarian stuff. To me, Milei encapsulates the rage of the Argentine people, the anger at the successive Peronist governments whose policies have done nothing but bring misery and economic instability to the country. But Milei's popularity has waned in recent months, as evidenced by the Buenos Aires provincial elections, which he lost in a landslide. Now, Milei warned on the campaign trail that his version of fixing Argentina would result in a lot of short-term suffering. But the question is, electorally, is if the Argentine people are willing to take much more austerity when the bright future that Milei has promised is not materializing. The economy isn't growing. Now at this point you might be thinking, Argentina's problems seem pretty hardcore. So why does the Trump administration want to give it $20 billion? Well, first, Javier Milei is a staunch supporter of Donald Trump. And if you know Donald Trump, you know that he loves when people just glaze the hell out of him. And so that is the first and very simple reason as to why Donald Trump wants to help Javier Milei. He's called Javier Milei his favorite president, which is very high praise coming from our dear and glorious leader, Donald Trump. So Occam's razor offers one piece of the puzzle. Milei like Trump, Trump like Milei, Trump give Milei $20 billion to bail out his government. You know, it's just what friends do for each other. Now the second point is the one that I find more interesting. Secretary Bessent would reject this characterization of the currency swap, but it is very true that major US investment firms are highly leveraged in Argentina. This includes investment firms like Fidelity, BlackRock, and PIMCO, according to the New York Times. Secretary Bessent is personally connected to a lot of the leadership at these investment firms. So it's not unreasonable to think that prominent investment firms in the United States with significant financial interests in Argentina would be incentivized to lobby our federal government to provide a currency swap agreement for $20 billion to give some liquidity to Milei's government. Might be just in the interest of those big institutional investors. Now for our third point, China. China. We're in a trade war with them again, I guess. Maybe that changes after I publish the video. Who knows? It moves too fast. But anyway, as Trump alienates potential partners in South America like Lula of Brazil and Gustavo Petro of Colombia, he needs a stalwart sort of ally in Latin America to curb China's influence in the region. At least this is the way the administration thinks about it. Javier Milei is just such a stalwart ally. Latin America is one of the newest battlegrounds in this sort of quasi-Cold War between the United States and China. So the United States sees Javier Milei as a potential counterweight to Chinese influence in the region. China has fairly grand ambitions in Latin America through its state-led infrastructure project known as the Belt and Road Initiative. But we don't want that. We don't want the Chinese in Latin America because that's our turf, okay? That's the Americans. We're the ones who get to meddle in Latin America, okay? Not you, China. It's gotta be us, right? We gotta invade the Panama Canal, not China. God forbid the Latin American countries do their own thing. No, somebody has to be meddling. It's gotta be the United States or China, one of the two, right? I mean, come on. They can't do stuff by themselves. Anyway, maybe I made my opinion clear there. The United States doesn't want China in Latin America. They don't want them in our backyard. Secretary Bessent has said as much in his tweets about the issue. Argentina holds new elections later this month. These are the ones to keep an eye on to see if Javier Milei's political fortunes go up or down. This is going to be the true test of Milei's political power, and probably the true test as to whether this United States investment is going to pan out. Argentina does not have a great track record of making good on its economic agreements. It's really unclear and anybody's guess as to whether this is going to pan out. To me, it seems pretty obviously a political move of Trump supporting a politician who is a staunch supporter of Trump and protecting wealthy investors' interests in the region. That's just my take. I'd love to hear yours in the comments below. So, I hope that you learned something new about Argentina today. And like and subscribe to Diplomatik. I will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Nos estamos pasando de arriba porque no solo le ganamos en lo productivo, somos superiores moralmente, somos superiores estéticamente, somos mejores en todo. Y les duele, les duele.